does Jannik Sinner struggle too much when the heat is on? Jannik Sinner remains on track to defend his Australian Open crown, but his physical condition has raised growing concerns during the first 4 rounds in Melbourne. In recent years, tennis has been pushed to its limits by an increasingly demanding schedule. In 2025, nearly 5% of ATP matches ended with one player withdrawing mid-match. Carlos Alcaraz even suggested last year that the relentless calendar feels like they are trying to kill us in some way. Sinner has largely stayed quiet on the debate, adopting more of an "it is what it is" mentality. Still, he has been one of the leading voices calling for better welfare and compensation for players at the Grand Slams. Yet despite his calm approach, the Italian has looked particularly vulnerable in extreme conditions, especially in the heat. Melbourne heat exposes Sinner's fragility on Saturday. Sinner's title defense appeared to be slipping away. Against Elliot Spitzeri, the world number 2 struggled badly under the sweltering Rod Laver Arena temperatures. Cramping severely, his body seemed to betray him at a crucial moment. The heat stress rule provided a lifeline. With the roof closed, Sinner was granted a 10-minute recovery break, while down a break in the 3rd set. "I got lucky," admitted the 4-time Grand Slam champion afterward. This is not the first time Sinner has battled physical adversity in Melbourne. During last year's run, he needed a medical timeout against Holger Rune in the 4th round before recovering to win in 4 sets. "I knew in my mind I would struggle today," he said then. An unusually honest admission from a player of his stature, the familiar pattern in Sinner's career. The brutal Australian Open conditions are infamous. Daniil Medvedev has described them as brutal, while Gael Monfils once said he felt like he was dying on court. But for Sinner, physical dips have appeared repeatedly across different tournaments. That he cramped badly against Talon Griekspoor in Shanghai under punishing humidity and eventually had to retire, leaving the court with assistance. At Wimbledon 2024, he looked visibly unwell during his quarterfinal against Medvedev, a factor that contributed to a draining 5-set loss. Even in the Cincinnati final last summer, Sinner fell behind 5-0 in just 23 minutes against Alcaraz before pulling out with the U.S. Open looming. Champions fight, but can his body hold up? There is no question Sinner possesses the mindset of a champion. His resilience was on full display in last year's Marathon French Open final, where he fought back from the brink to push the match into a championship tiebreak. Still, the recurring theme remains. Can he physically endure tennis's toughest battles? Early in his career, retirements and withdrawals were common. French outlet L'Equipe once summed up the concern. "Jannik Sinner is fantastic, but he has not been spared from some physical defects." Those included illness withdrawals against Nick Kyrgios at Indian Wells in 2022, blisters forcing him out in Miami weeks later, and a knee issue ending his Roland Garros match against Andrei Rublev that same spring. Of course, injuries happen to every athlete. Alcaraz has also withdrawn from events to protect himself, but he has not suffered the same repeated physical collapses in key moments. The numbers tell a story. One statistic stands out sharply. Sinner's 5-set record is 6-10. Alcaraz, by contrast, boasts an extraordinary 14-1 record in deciding sets. Even more striking, Sinner has never won a match lasting longer than 3 hours and 50 minutes. Few opponents manage to push him that far, but when they do, his stamina becomes a question mark. Even during his hugely successful 2024 season, former fitness coach Marco Panici highlighted endurance as an area for improvement, saying Sinner needed to physically last longer in order to maintain his high-intensity level. The final test awaits. The Australian Open is a tournament that pushes players beyond their limits, mentally, physically, and emotionally. If Sinner reaches the final weekend, the deciding factor may not be his shot-making brilliance, but whether his body can withstand the heat, the hours, and the brutal demands of championship tennis. Longevity, as much as talent, could determine whether he lifts the trophy again on February.